Hello, Rachel. Hello, everyone. We are happy that you join us today for our Fireside Chat. Before we started, we would like to introduce ourselves. My name is Michał Magdziak. I work for BNP Paribas in Poland, and I'm a chapter leader. And probably in the part of us, you're thinking, who is a chapter leader? So I had the same feeling when I, started the recruitment process in BNP. So don't worry. But truly, I'm a leader of the team of great people, which are developing the mobile and web app in Poland for BNP Paribas. Before we move forward, please tell us something about yourself, introduce yourself, tell us about your company, and what is your goal? What would you like to achieve?
Thank you. And hello, everybody, in person and online. Lovely to be back at Zero Project. It's my third year, and honestly, they just get better every single year. I leave energized for the rest of the year. I am an independent advisor and consultant, so I work in the UK. I'm from England, if you can't tell with the accent, though Yorkshire, that accent tends to come out when I've had a couple of drinks. But in this context, I'd mainly describe myself as an AI ethicist. So I look not so much at the technical side of things and the coding, but actually the context in which AI is being used, who's using it, what data is being fed into it, and actually what are the bigger questions that sadly firms, banks, financial industries aren't maybe considering and come to kind of bite us in 5 or 10 years down the line. So I work in the financial industries, but I also look at transport and also employment, because actually all three of those different industries, you may be surprised, but I have the same conversations with every single industry, and they say, well, these problems are really unique to us. And I say, no, they're not. So in terms of my goal, I'm really big on actually knowledge sharing and knowledge exchange. What can industries learn from each other? This isn't a siloed conversation, especially when it comes to AI and disability. We have to be considering this at a much more macro level.
Yeah. When we speak about digital accessibility, we cooperate in Poland. Thanks to Business Accessibility Forum and Carolina, we cooperate with different companies. And we speak also about AI. We cooperate like in financial sector, but also with Blik or, for example, Polish Airlines. But before we deep dive to AI, I would like to ask you how it looks like in UK. I mean, how the elderly people or people with disabilities use AI today. I mean, financial sector.
Mm-hmm. So, I think that's a really important caveat to start with, is that I am very much talking from my perspective, from a UK perspective. This changes, the conversation changes depending on, what culture and area that, we're discussing. So from a UK context, AI has been in our tech, whether that's assistive tech or just general tech, for decades. This isn't new technology. Yeah. And I think part of the reason why it's becoming such a hot topic, and we're starting to see a lot more resistance, is that there's been this kind of blanket approach to actually what AI is. Yep. And specifically within the financial services, we're seeing AI kind of being used as a buzzword, and it's being attached to products and services that are in essence creating this it's this new digital transformation. And the fear there for a lot of people who would kind of sit under, I guess, the vulnerable customer umbrella, is that this is part of what's going to make these services inaccessible, that it's going to take away their access to things like cash and physical infrastructure, their branches that they go in and they rely on for their shopping, for their day-to-day activity.
Yeah, I think for financial sector, it is the problem because we are overloaded by regulatory and it's difficult to implement it in our ecosystem. But I want to ask you that does digital transformation it always mean digital accessibility?
I guess that's the aim. That's what we'd like it to aim for. But I do think, firms in particular, when they think about digital transformation, it's about return of investment. It's actually, formed of people who likely don't sit under like accessibility as a main area. Access tends to be an add-on, a separate team, usually within HR. But if for regulation purposes, they might sit in like the risk team.
Yep.
Whereas it isn't an integral part of a digital transformation project, and I think that's where we see things being launched for pilots, and then it suddenly dawns on a firm that they spent a lot of money, and actually it's not set up in a way that's going to protect vulnerable customers. It's not going to meet the regulation, particularly in the UK. That there's that complete disconnect, I think.
Yeah, I think that very important topic is how we define the vulnerable customer today, because I think this is the problem. Because of course we use AI to, for example, risk management, but it also could discriminate people sometimes. So how it is in UK, and are we doing correct?
It's a really interesting topic that is far more than the short time we have here to go through. So in the UK, the term vulnerable customer is actually a set definition by the FCA, so that's the Financial Conduct Authority, and it encompasses a large group of people. It considers things like health, life events, resilience, capability, and in that phrasing, it's more like competency, how competent somebody is to access services. So one thing about that is it's great for identifying that vulnerability is actually quite agile, that people can move in and out of being vulnerable. But it centers that vulnerability on the individual, and it doesn't actually recognize that vulnerability could even be caused by the very service that they're trying to access. I may not be a vulnerable customer, but I come to a banking app that I really struggle to access, and all of a sudden I become a vulnerable customer because I can't access my money. Yep. So it's a difficult kind of balancing act of like, where do we draw the line? And particularly for firms, a lot of that is based on an individual themselves declaring and disclosing that they have a disability or that they are vulnerable. And many people don't realize that something that they're going through is something they need to disclose. Way more outside of like more social model, like actually somebody going through a divorce, that is classed as a life event that makes somebody vulnerable. So yeah, it's a very blurred line definition.
Yep. So is it possible to find a balance between digital and optimization and needs of different group of customers? For example, we have elderly people, we have people with disabilities, and for example, we have Gen Z and different needs.
Yeah. I think I'm really excited by the potential of AI in that space as a way for firms to develop tools and services that support people actually where they're at. Lloyds Banking Group last year released their digital consumer report, and it showed that in the UK, I think 28 million people had accessed some form of AI, thinking like ChatGPT's Copilot, Gemini, for financial advice. That is a massive amount of people who are turning to AI. And we have to ask the question of why? Why was this technology used rather than the traditional methods of, going into a branch and speaking with somebody, or using other online resources? And I think in part it's because the AI was able to speak their language. It was able to kind of meet them without any bias, or there was no fear of feeling outside of the definition of vulnerable customer. There was no fear of it's an incredibly vulnerable conversation to go up to somebody that you don't know and give them your entire financial view. Actually, the AI has the capacity to be that individual kind of response without that fear of judgment.
So, because in financial sector we still have a problem with that, probably because of the regulations. But what are the risks? Because as you said, many adult people use, for example, ChatGPT. So what are the benefits and what are the risks?
Benefits, as I kind of went through, is potentially a much more judgment-free method. The consumer report also highlighted that on average people were saving money. They were saving money by having access to this on-tap financial advisor. Though, in the UK currently the FCA and the Treasury are doing this advice guidance boundary review where firms are very hesitant to give actual advice because there is a very defined red line, and by going over that line, it's a huge risk. So if we're thinking about actually can AI offer people that individualized support, where's the red line? And if harm happens because of any support and guidance that was given that maybe crossed the line into advice, actually where does that risk sit? Who does that risk sit with?
Yeah, and where is this responsibility?
Exactly.
In the banking area, for example. If you could, because we are almost in the end of our conversation, but if you could send the message to the world, something short, what it will be?
AI has massive potential.
Yep.
And I think we have to be really clear and actually take a lot more responsibility as people who are shaping the conversations that are happening of actually what do we mean by AI? When we talk about it being added to financial services, in what capacity? It is a buzzword, but we have to also recognize that for a huge proportion of the population, that is attached to, the risks and the negativity that we're seeing in the media that's linked to AI as well. So if I have to sum up a massive conversation into less than a minute, I really feel that individual firms have the potential here to shape what future, even like legislation, looks like. Yeah. We know that legislation and policy will be moving at too slow of a pace to really keep up with the changes that are happening. Yeah. So actually, not to work in silos, but to come together, whether that's through forums, round tables, and share knowledge and share, attitudes and behaviors of customers to map out where the technology that we are evolving into can genuinely be accessible, can genuinely meet people where they're at, and make sure that financial services stay accessible and inclusive as we move into a digital age.
Yeah. I also think that AI is a big opportunity and game changer also for financial sector. I am the leader of accessibility in Poland, in my bank, in BNP Paribas, and my message for the world is when we speak about accessibility, we should remember that we speak about people, not numbers.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.